We are going to talk about contrast in a Raisin in the Sun. It should be noted that, like setting, contrast can be handled from four different levels of analysis. We have contrastive settings, we have contrastive characters, we have contrastive objects, we have contrastive actions or themes. And every time you are handling a question on contrast, say what separates these two things that you are contrasting and how important is the contrast to our understanding of the plane. At the level of setting, the North is contrasted to the South. In the South, blacks are typically treated as slaves. Many of them lack the freedom for ownership, the freedom to education, and they work purely as sharecroppers, thereby living a life of total poverty. But many blacks have hopes by running up into the North, which is a free zone, where blacks can go to school, blacks can be empowered through education, blacks can even own property. Nevertheless, what is very common between these two is that racism is ever present. In the South, the racism is very open. In short, it is institutionalized. But in the North, it is covert. It is closed. It is hidden. But it doesn't mean that it exists. That is the reason why blacks can only live in ghettos like Chicago South Side, and whites can live in better neighborhoods like Claiborne Park, which is exclusively for the whites. And whoever attempts to come there is kicked out, highlighting racial segregation. In the North also, blacks are forced to be educated so that through their education they can think, behave like whites in order to gain admission into the mainstream white community, highlighting assimilation. Another aspect of contrasting setting could be the younger apartment and the younger home. The younger apartment is the house in which the youngest live at Chicago South Side, which is a rented apartment, which is shared by many other tenants. We are made to understand that the apartment does not have adequate accommodation space because it's a two-roomed house. And Travis has to use the sitting room as his sleeping position. Even Mama's plant does not have space because not sufficient light does not come into the apartment. But above all, the furniture in the house is very old and worn out, highlighting poverty, misery. Nevertheless, it's a house full of love as Mama holds this family together. We also note that the younger home is the house that Mama buys at Claiborne Park using part of the money from the check. She does not buy it because she loves living at Claiborne Park, but because of affordability. When she comes and announces to Travis that she has just bought a house which will be his in the future, members of the family are very excited and elated. But the excitement dies down immediately they are informed that the house is found at Claiborne Park, which is a typically white neighborhood, highlighting racial discrimination. The buying of the house also highlights success of ownership and the achievement and the realization of a family dream of owning a house that rightfully belongs to the youngest. At the level of characters, we can contrast George Murchison, who is a young man who comes from a well-to-do and rich family, but who believes that you can only be important in the American society when you are educated And so through his education, he exhibits a lot of pride and looks low on people who are not educated and poor. He thinks he can use his money to control and maybe put pressure on Benietta to succumb to whatever thing he wants from her, but she does not accept. She is one of those who behaves and thinks as if they are white. He snubs his African origin and does not see anything good about Africa, which he considers to be a place of hurts where people don't wear dresses. And he's not interested in knowing their history or culture, as Benietta does, and even mocks her at spending her energy to find her cultural identity. On the other hand, Asagai is a culturally conscious African who comes to America to attain education with the intention of going back to Nigeria and using his education to bring change upon his community. He loves Benietta genuinely and uses his influence over her to make her to understand that no one happens to be important if you do not know where you come from. And she is happy, and he is happy when he finds out that Benietta is taking interest in finding about her cultural identity. He rebukes her for straightening her hair, that she decides to cut it and keep it natural and low, and makes her to start wearing African fabrics, which makes her believe or try to assume and get interested in African history, culture, and its personalities. George and Asagai are very contrastive in that one highlights materialistic love, while the other's love is genuine. One is an assimilationist, while one is an advocate for true cultural identity. We can also contrast Mama and Ruth, who believe that Benietta can get married to George because he comes from a wealthy family and he should make a better husband for her. But Benietta does not even think that he is worth a husband material because he considers him shallow and condescending, highlighting feminism. We can also highlight themes, contrast themes, such as assimilationism, using people like George Hutchinson and Booker T, who think that it is only through education that one can use to integrate into the white culture versus the search of a true African identity and Afrocentricism, which is exhibited by Asagai. Contrast is also used in the interpretation of the dream. Mama sees the realization of dreams beyond the acquisition of money. But she thinks that life can be more meaningful when we apply certain values of the family, such as unity and love. It is for this reason that she does everything to keep her family together, try to make sure that it does not split. And this explains the reason why she goes to buy the house without informing any of her family members. On the other hand, Walter interprets the dream from the pure capitalist point of view, which is investment. He is so obsessed with money that puts him at odds with Lena and ends up with pains when he carries out a reckless investment with Willie Harris, despite warning from Ruth, who has always considered him a good-for-nothing fellow, and Mama, who does not approve of the type of business that he wants to invest in because it goes against his religious beliefs, highlighting conflict. At the end of it all, he loses the family money, thereby putting him in conflict with Benietta. Lastly, we can contrast objects like the younger apartment, which highlights misery and poverty, and the younger home, which highlights the achievement of a family dream and racial discrimination. These things, some of them have been repeated up. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share the videos to other students, like the videos, leave us a comment so that we can be able to know what to think about what we are doing. See you.